The sun hung heavy in the late afternoon sky, the kind of bright day that should have felt warm and hopeful, yet somehow everything around me felt painfully quiet. I had just stepped out of the small auto workshop where I'd been fired only 20 minutes earlier, my last paycheck tucked into my pocket like a reminder of how quickly life can collapse. My hands smelled faintly of engine oil, and my heart carried the weight of a man who had run out of luck but was still pretending that maybe tomorrow would be different. As I walked toward my rusty old silver car, something in the corner of my eye made me pause. A woman stood near the roadside, her shoulders trembling, her hair messy as if the day had tossed her around. She wasn't crying loudly, but the way her breath shook even from a distance told me she was fighting hard not to fall apart. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story. But the moment she lifted her head and our eyes met, I felt an unexpected pull, the kind that makes your heartbeat slip into a strange rhythm. That was the moment everything changed for both of us. That if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles so we can spread more stories that remind people that good hearts still exist in this world. Her name, I would soon learn, was Marina Hale, a 27-year-old interior designer whose life looked polished from the outside but was cracking silently from within. She didn't approach me at first. Instead, she glanced toward the busy road as though waiting for anyone to notice she wasn't okay. Then, with the sunlight catching the tears she had been trying to hide, she whispered the words that would twist my fate with hers. Can you drive me home? Please? Her voice was so soft I almost thought I imagined it, but the desperation behind it was unmistakable. I opened the passenger door without hesitation, even though something in me whispered that this wasn't going to be a simple ride. I had nowhere else to be, nowhere else to go, so picking up a stranger felt like the first meaningful thing I'd done in weeks. As she sat down, I noticed the small bruise along her forearm, the kind that suggested a rough grab rather than an accident. But I didn't ask. People have stories they aren't ready to tell. We drove through the bright, buzzing city streets, yet inside the car it felt silent enough to hear her breathe. The sunlight cut through the windshield in clean stripes, illuminating the dust on my dashboard and the tension in her eyes. She kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white, like she was holding herself together thread by thread. After almost 10 minutes of silence, she released a shaky breath and murmured, "I didn't know where else to go." He took my phone, and I just ran when I got the chance. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, not out of anger but out of the familiar ache of watching someone brake quietly. I didn't know who he was yet, but I knew enough to understand she wasn't escaping something small. That I told her she was safe now, even though I didn't know how true that was. But she looked at me like she wanted to believe it. She directed me toward a quiet residential street lined with daytime shadows and flowering trees that looked far too peaceful for the chaos she had just described. When we pulled up in front of her home, a beautiful white two-story with pots of fresh daisies by the porch, she hesitated before getting out. She placed her hand on mine, and I felt her fingers trembling uncontrollably. "Please, don't go," she whispered, looking at me like I was the only anchor in her collapsing world. Just for a moment. I need someone here." I didn't understand why she trusted me, a stranger with nothing to offer except a quiet presence, but I nodded. Maybe we both needed someone. She invited me inside, and I stepped into a living room that felt like it was designed for happiness, soft pastel colors, warm daylight streaming through sheer curtains, cozy cushions. But everything inside felt cold, distant, almost staged. She sat on the couch, hugging a pillow like a shield. I remained standing, unsure of the rules in this fragile space. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "My fiancé. Adrian. He isn't who people think he is." She said it slowly, as though each word scraped against a part of her still hurting. "I tried to leave today. He didn't take it well." My stomach tightened because I could see now that her bruise was not the only wound he left. Her spirit looked tired, worn, almost dim, but also fighting, desperately. I was a man who had lost my job that very morning. She was a woman who had lost her safety the same day. Two broken people sharing the same afternoon sun, the same uncertainty, the same quiet hope that maybe things didn't have to stay this way forever. She asked if I could stay a little longer, and I agreed. She made tea, but her hands shook so badly that half the water spilled. I gently took the kettle from her, and something in her expression softened, like she wasn't used to someone stepping in without wanting something in return. We talked for an hour, or rather, she talked, and I listened. She told me about her childhood, her dreams, the business she wanted to start, and the relationship that slowly chipped away her confidence piece by piece. There was something beautifully human about her vulnerability, raw and unfiltered under the bright daylight in her living room. When she finally leaned back, exhausted, she looked at me and said the words that pulled a strange laugh out of me even in the heaviness of the moment: "If you drive me home, where do you sleep?" She said it innocently, almost apologetically, as though realizing I had nowhere to go and she had asked something big of someone who already had nothing. The truth was painful: I didn't have a home anymore. My landlord had changed the locks earlier because I had missed 2 months of rent. I wasn't planning to sleep anywhere. I thought I'd just sit in my car until morning. When I told her this, she looked at me with disbelief, then guilt, then something soft and determined. "You can stay here," she said. "At least for tonight. Please. You saved me today, let me help you a little too." I refused at first. I didn't want to impose. But she placed her hand on my arm again, and I could feel the sincerity in it, the quiet plea not to be alone in that big silent house. So I agreed, thinking I'd sleep on the living room floor. She made me a makeshift bed with blankets, and we shared dinner, simple pasta she cooked while still shaking a little. We talked about small things, stories that made us forget, for a moment, the heaviness of our real lives. Daylight faded into soft evening light, and in that warm glow, the house didn't feel cold anymore. It felt like two lives cautiously rebuilding themselves under the same roof. Over the next few days, I stayed in her guest room. I helped her change her locks, update security, and call a lawyer. She helped me search for new jobs, fix my resume, and even drove me to 2 interviews. She smiled more with each passing day, like sunlight slowly returning after a long winter. And I felt myself changing too. The mornings no longer felt heavy. The afternoons didn't feel hopeless. I began to laugh again, something I didn't realize I had stopped doing, but the peace didn't last long. One bright afternoon, while Marina was watering her plants on the porch, Adrian showed up. His voice was sharp, his steps heavy, his tone dripping with entitlement as he demanded she come outside. Fear flashed across her face, but I stepped out before she could. The sunlight hit him squarely, revealing the arrogance in his posture. He accused me of ruining his relationship, of trying to steal his fiancée, of meddling where I didn't belong. But Marina, trembling but brave, stepped between us and told him clearly, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, that she was done, that he didn't own her, and that this was her choice. Adrian's rage twisted into disbelief, then humiliation as the neighbors started watching. He finally left, promising he'd be back, but with Marina's new security and legal steps, he didn't get near her again. Something powerful shifted that day. She was no longer running, she was standing her ground. And I wasn't just some stranger anymore. I had somehow become part of the life she was trying to rebuild weeks past. I found a new job, nothing big, but stable. She opened a small design studio with her best friend. We still lived in the same house, not out of desperation now, but something else unspoken. We cooked together, laughed together, grew together. Every morning felt lighter, brighter, safer. And one sunny afternoon, as she prepared lunch, she said something that rooted itself deeply in my heart: "I'm glad you stayed that day. Not because I needed help, but because I needed hope. And you brought it with you." Life doesn't always give you what you expect. Sometimes it gives you what you need most when you least expect it. Two broken strangers crossing paths on a daytime city street, each saving the other without even realizing it. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need a reminder that kindness still changes lives. Special request: comment below. Kindness can change everything. If you felt the emotion in this story,